I sat at the head of the mahogany conference table, looking at the people I used to call family. The room was dead silent, the kind of silence that hangs in the air right before a bomb goes off. The air conditioning hummed faintly, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat. My wife's funeral was barely a memory, and already the vultures were circling. My daughter-in-law Monica leaned forward, placing both hands flat on the polished wood. She didn't look like a grieving relative. She looked like a predator who had just cornered her exhausted prey. She slammed a thick stack of legal documents onto the table, the sound cracking through the silence like a gunshot. "Now that the old woman is gone," she said, her voice dripping with venom, "you will put the company in my son's name and fend for yourself. You are done here, Richard. It's our turn now." I looked at my son Derek, sitting beside her, staring down at his expensive shoes, too much of a coward to meet his father's eyes. They believed they had a grieving 70-year-old man completely backed into a corner. They truly thought I was an easy target, but they forgot exactly who built the empire they were trying to steal. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply smiled, folded my hands and waited. Exactly 3 seconds later, the heavy boardroom doors swung open. My lawyer, Victor Lang, walked in without a word. He crossed the room and dropped a certified DNA test right in front of Monica. Before I tell you what that piece of paper said, and how I utterly destroyed the people who tried to bury me alive, let me take you back 3 days, to where this war actually began. The scent of funeral lilies still hung thick in the air of my home. My Diane was gone. 45 years of marriage, cut short by pancreatic cancer in a matter of brutal months. The house was painfully quiet now, empty in a way that made my chest physically ache. I stood at the kitchen sink, letting warm water run over my hands as I washed a simple glass. A mindless task, something to keep my hands busy so my mind wouldn't drift back to the empty chair in our living room. That's when I heard the sharp, rapid click of expensive heels on the hardwood floor. Monica strode into the kitchen, not a single tear in her eyes, not a trace of sorrow on her perfectly made-up face. She was dressed in a sharp black designer suit, looking like she was walking into a hostile corporate takeover, not mourning the woman who raised her husband. Without a word of comfort, without even asking how I was holding up, she dropped a thick manila folder onto the counter, printed across the top in bold black letters, "Emergency Handover and Succession Agreement." "What is this, Monica?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She sighed, theatrical and exaggerated, like she was dealing with a stubborn child. "It's for your own good, Richard. You're 70 years old. You just lost Diane. You're in no condition to run Caldwell Logistics right now. Sign this today, and we transfer executive powers to Chase." Chase, my 18-year-old grandson, a boy who had barely managed to graduate high school and spent more time photographing his sports cars for social media than he ever spent looking at a balance sheet. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. Caldwell Logistics wasn't just a company to me. It was the blood, sweat, and tears of my entire adult life. Diane and I built that $15 million empire from a single rusted delivery truck back in 1985. No wealthy investors. $100 in the bank and a shared dream. We spent our 20s eating cold sandwiches in freezing parking lots, sleeping in the cab of that truck, fighting for every client. Diane kept the books on a fold-out table while I drove through blizzards to make deliveries. And now, 3 days after burying the woman who helped me build all of it, my daughter-in-law wanted me to hand the keys to a teenager so she could pull the strings from the shadows. "The company is running just fine," I said quietly. "I'm grieving, Monica. I am not incapacitated." Right on cue, my son Derek walked in. 42 years old, but standing beside his overbearing wife, he looked like a frightened boy waiting for orders. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, wearing a rehearsed mask of concern. "Dad, please, just listen to her. The doctor said your blood pressure's been dangerously high. We're worried about you. We don't want to lose you too. Just sign the papers. Let Chase hold the title in the family trust, and Monica and I will handle daily operations. You can finally rest." It sounded so caring. It was the perfect plausible lie. But I knew Derek better than anyone. I'd spent millions on his Ivy League education, only to watch him become a man who couldn't make a single decision without his wife's permission. I looked at the gold pen Monica had conveniently placed beside the folder. I'll think about it, I said, stepping back. I need time to read the clauses before I sign anything. They left, footsteps fading down the hallway, believing I hadn't refused outright. Alone in the kitchen, I turned toward the dark bay window that mirrored the hallway. In the reflection, I watched Monica pause near the front door, pull out her phone, and type quickly. She had no idea I could see her. As she hit send, she muttered under her breath, a vicious, triumphant smirk on her face. The old man took the bait, prepped the chairs. I stood alone in my quiet kitchen, the water still dripping from the faucet. They thought I was a broken, clueless old widower who would simply roll over. A lone wolf might lose his mate, but he never loses his teeth. And I was about to bite back hard. The next morning, I was awake before the sun considered rising. Sleep hadn't come easily. The silence of the house without Diane was suffocating, and the realization that my own family was conspiring against me made the air feel even thinner. By 6 a.m., I was pulling into the executive parking lot of Caldwell Logistics, heading straight for the executive archives, where the backup records of every major financial transaction and trust document were kept. If Monica and Derek were planning a hostile takeover, they would need to alter the foundational operating agreements first. I swiped my master keycard, a harsh, flat tone, a blinking red light. Access denied. I swiped again. Denied. A third time. Denied. Having some trouble with the door, Richard? Bradley Jenkins, our CFO, stepped out of the shadows near the break room, drenched in cologne, wearing a rehearsed plastic smile far too comfortable for 6 in the morning. Right. I should have warned you. We're running a full system update on the security servers this weekend. Derek ordered a complete overhaul of the digital access protocols. He mentioned you'd be taking an extended leave to mourn Diane, so he approved the overhaul himself. Don't worry, Richard. We've got everything under control. You should go home and rest. Derek ordered it, locking his own father out of the archives 3 days after burying his mother. I looked into Bradley's eyes, cold, calculating, full of silent mockery. He knew exactly what he was doing. They were building a digital fortress to hide whatever they were planning, using my son as the face of the operation. The old Richard would have grabbed Bradley by his silk tie, but the man standing there now was a seasoned veteran of exactly this kind of war. A scene would only give them what they needed, proof that grief had made me erratic, unfit to lead. I'm not going to argue with you, Bradley, I said smoothly. A security update is long overdue. Tell Derek I appreciate his sudden interest in data protection. I walked calmly to my office and locked the heavy door behind me. They thought cutting off my keycard would blind me. They controlled the servers, but they fundamentally misunderstood how an old wolf protects his territory. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, pressed my thumb against a hidden biometric scanner, and a secret compartment slid open. Inside sat a dust-covered external hard drive. 10 years earlier, anticipating exactly this kind of betrayal, I'd had a backdoor built directly into the mainframe, an offline mirror of every financial record Caldwell Logistics had ever generated. I connected it to my laptop. The screen prompted me for an encrypted password sequence only I knew. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, moments away from cracking open whatever rot Monica and Bradley were hiding. Then my private cell phone rang. Almost no one had that number. Definitely no one should be calling at 6:30 in the morning. The caller ID read, Memorial Hospital. Mr. Caldwell, this is the emergency department. We're calling about your grandson, Chase. He's been in a severe motorcycle accident. He's in the trauma unit. We need family here immediately. I slammed the laptop shut, shoved the drive back into hiding, and ran. The digital war would have to wait. My grandson was bleeding. The drive to Memorial Hospital was a terrifying blur. Red lights, blaring horns, reckless swerves through morning traffic. I abandoned my car in the emergency drop-off zone and burst through the sliding doors. Fluorescent light, the smell of antiseptic and stale coffee. At the end of the hallway, Monica paced, typing furiously on her phone, more inconvenienced than devastated. Derek sat slumped in a plastic chair, head in his hands, his tailored suit wrinkled, shoulders shaking. Dad, he choked out, standing. I got here as fast as I could. What happened? How bad is it? I asked, gripping his shoulders. Derek's eyes darted to Monica. He took a corner too fast on that new motorcycle, slid into a guardrail. He had his helmet on, thank God. No brain damage, no spinal trauma, but a deep laceration on his thigh, some internal bruising, and he lost a lot of blood before the paramedics got there. Monica crossed her arms, sighing sharply. It's a complete disaster, Richard. We were supposed to finalize the trust transfer this afternoon, and now we're stuck in this miserable waiting room. I stared at her, appalled. Her teenage son was on an operating table, and she was worried about a signing schedule. The trauma bay doors swung open. A tired attending physician stepped out, scrubs stained with blood. Family of Chase Caldwell? We gathered around him. He's stable for now. We stopped the primary bleeding in his leg, vitals are holding. He paused, glancing at his clipboard, something clearly troubling him beyond the injuries. There's something in his blood work we need a parent to clarify. It's unusual. We'll need someone to speak with the attending team. That unusual detail was the thread Victor Lang had already begun pulling. My attorney, the same man who'd drafted every legitimate document Caldwell Logistics had ever signed, had been quietly running background checks from the moment Monica dropped that succession folder on my counter. He'd flagged inconsistencies in the paperwork almost immediately. Dates that didn't align, signatures rushed through without proper notarization, a trust structure written to funnel everything toward Chase specifically, bypassing Derek entirely. It was oddly, suspiciously specific. Victor wanted to know why. When the hospital's blood work came back, it answered that question in a way none of us expected. Chase's blood type was medically impossible given Derek's. Victor, already suspicious, requested a paternity test before I'd even thought to ask. 3 days later, we were all back in that same boardroom, the one where Monica had once slammed her documents down like a queen delivering a decree. This time, I sat at the head of the table with Victor beside me, and every piece of leverage in my hand. Monica repeated her demands, oblivious to what was coming. Derek sat frozen, refusing to meet my eyes. I let her finish completely. Then I nodded to Victor. He walked in, laid the certified DNA results in front of her, and said nothing. He didn't need to. Monica's face drained of color as she read it. Chase was not Derek's biological son. He never had been. Every part of her plan, the succession agreement, the security lockout, the campaign to paint me as a grieving old fool, unfit to run his own company, had been engineered to hand a $15 million empire to a boy with no blood claim to it at all, erasing Derek from his own inheritance in the process, while Derek stood beside her, defending a lie he never even knew he was living. You built your entire coup on a name that isn't even his, I said quietly. Did you really think I wouldn't check? I built this company out of nothing but a truck and a dream. You think I wouldn't protect it from people who never once picked up a shovel? I laid out the rest, calmly, one piece at a time. Bradley Jenkins' unauthorized security overhaul, the falsified handover agreement drafted before Diane was even in the ground, the text messages Victor had traced back to Monica's phone, time-stamped the very morning she'd dropped that folder on my kitchen counter. Bradley was terminated within the week and reported to the board. Monica's succession agreement was voided as fraudulent, with a paper trail solid enough that Victor was confident it would hold if she tried to contest it. Derek, for the first time in years, looked at me directly, not at his shoes, not at his wife, and said he needed time away from her to figure out who he actually was. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Diane spent her whole life teaching me that real strength doesn't shout, it waits, it watches, and it strikes exactly once, precisely where it counts. Caldwell Logistics is still mine, still standing, still carrying her name on the lobby wall, right where I placed it the day we moved into that building. They thought a grieving old man was an easy target. They forgot that the man who built an empire out of $100 and a rusted truck doesn't lose his teeth just because he lost his mate.